Good morning, all participants. Good morning, Professor Vishal. So let me introduce our today's speaker. So Professor Vishal Garg is professor and head of the Center for IT and Building Science at the International Institute of Information Technology, Hyderabad. He is also the founding head of Center for IT and Building Science. He completed his doctorate from IIT Delhi in the area of energy. In his academic career of over 20 years, Dr. Garg has been actively involved in supporting the formulation of national level policies and standards and implementation of building energy codes in India. His current research interests are in the area of building energy simulation, building automation, and cool roofs. For his contributions in the domain of building energy efficiency and cool roofs, he has received several international recognitions, which include the Fellowship of International Building Performance Simulation Association in 2019, Dr. Arthur H. Rosenfeld or Urban Cooling Achievement Award in 2018, Indian Green Building Council Fellow in 2016, and Life Fellow for Indian Society of Lighting Engineers in 2013. So I heartily welcome him, and I have an informal or formal association with him since 1991, that is 30 years, and I've been following him since then. And he was passionate in research since his bachelor's, when very few people have been passionate. And the interesting part is that he has decided his area of research at that very point of time when very few people think even about research. So I hope this lecture will be quite useful. So thanks, Professor Vishal, again, and let's welcome our speaker. Yes, now Professor Vishal, I think we can start the lecture.
Thank you, Professor Chaudhary. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay, thanks a lot for this kind introduction. And yeah, so let us start with the presentation. I'm going to talk about IoT for smart energy buildings. And I guess the total slot is 2 hours. So I'll try to restrict myself to about 1 hour 45 minutes, and then we can have questions. So basically, this is a huge topic. We are talking about IoT, we are talking about energy, and then we are talking about what do you mean by smart energy. So it's a very wide topic, and the idea is to give an overall picture what's happening in this area, and especially the current research topics in the area of how IoT can be applied for making the buildings smart energy. So let us see. So I would like to give a context. When I'm talking here about energy efficiency, I am talking about building energy efficiency. And I am talking in reference to the tropical climate. So I would mostly be talking about the cooling requirements and not talk about heating requirements. And then I'm focusing on commercial and residential buildings and not focusing on industrial buildings, say for example. So mostly it will be in this context that I'll be talking about. Now, let's see. So why do we need to control various services in a building? So there have been lots of studies, and it has been shown time and again that a building will perform efficiently if all the systems are controlled, especially as a part of an integrated system. So even in existing building, if we bring in controls and integrate all the services into one, there is a possibility of a huge savings. And these savings can be up to 30%. And we are not upgrading any appliances or anything. We are just controlling them properly. So basically what I want to emphasize here is that controls can help us save a lot of energy. And it's not necessary that it has to be a complete control. Even if there are some aspects which are controlled, like plug loads, like air conditioning, like shading devices or lighting, even in each of them, there is some savings that is possible. And obviously, if we do control of all these things collectively, we can save more. Now, we have all heard of smart cities. I'm sure many of you would have also heard of smart grids. But when we talk about both these components, both these things, the smart city and the smart grid, we should appreciate that one of the end nodes in both these networks is buildings. And if buildings are not smart, then how will cities be smart, right? So buildings consume maximum amount of resources. Uh, they impact the human life in a big way. And unless they are smart, we cannot say that the city is smart, right? So it's very important that we look at how do we make the buildings smart. And here again, we are talking from the point of view of energy and from the tropical countries. So how controls have been evolving over time? Uh, some of you would have seen these kind of manual controls in our cars. So interestingly, I always take examples from either aeronautics or automobiles. My observation is that the first technology comes into aeronautics, then we will see it in automobiles, and then usually the buildings are one of the last adopters somehow. I don't know why, but buildings are the last adopters of technology. So here you see uh, there is no set point temperature, right? You just say you want cold or you want hot, or you want a mix of heating and cooling. You set the fan speed, you set the air circulation, and air, where should the wind be, blowing onto the face, onto the legs or whatever, right? It's all manual. Then in the air conditioners, we see uh, some automation in the sense that here you can select the automatic option. So it will automatically change the fan speed. And you can also set the thermostat temperature, set point temperature, and it will automatically cut off the compressor when the temperature is achieved. And again, start the temperature when it is higher, the inside temperature is higher than the set point. Then we come to building management system. And here now we are going from individual AC, we are going all the way to the building. There can be different zones, different set point temperatures. Even when there is a central system which is providing the chilled air, say for example, but there can be different controllers in each space providing the control. Now here you see this is when we are moving from a space into the building, we traditionally have building management system. They are expensive and a lot of hardwiring and a lot of proprietary stuff here. So generally not available in smaller buildings and mostly available in bigger and high-end buildings. Now we talk about basically IoT. So I'll just skip this. Basically, so there. Sorry, let me just try to do this a little bit. So BMS will have lots of sensors, lots of actuators. Uh, it will bring dashboards like this where you can see what's happening in the building, and there would be a human computer interface. There would be a web server where all the data will be kept, some controllers, some buses which are connected to the controllers and to the interfaces, and then it brings all of on to the primary bus where we have a human computer interface. Now we talk about IoT. So the way things are arranged in IoT, it is quite different than how a regular BMS is arranged, as we just saw. Here, each device can be directly connected to the internet, and then data can be pulled from the internet and then brought onto the dashboards. And the logic can also reside on the internet. A lot of variations are there, but the beauty of IoT is that we can start at a very small level and scale it very easily. I'll give you an example. Today, it is very much possible to buy a, say, 500 rupees Wi-Fi based LED bulb, put it in your house, and then using a mobile phone, control the bulb, right? How many of you have such devices at your home, which are costing less than 1,000 rupees? You put it at your home and you can control the device using a mobile phone. Now imagine you asking this same functionality to a BMS vendor and saying that I want to control my AC and I want to control my light using my mobile phone, and I want to observe at any given time. I want to see what is the status of these devices. How much will they quote you? How difficult it will be to deploy that system in your home? It will cost a lot. It will be difficult to deploy. But here, because of IoT, we are able to do it low cost. We are able to do it ourselves and scalable. So what is IoT? How is it different than our regular internet? So by the name itself, it is very clear. It is Internet of Things. The regular internet is, you can say, Internet of people, right? So people are generating information and consuming information. So when I am looking at the emails, somebody has sent an email to me and I am looking at it and I am responding, right? Similarly, somebody has made a web page. Somebody has put a news on the web page. So people are creating content. They are putting it on the web pages. I am going and looking at those information. So that's Internet of People in a way. Now, Internet of Things is where the information is created by things and also consumed by the things. Okay. So there can be a device, say for example, a thermostat, which is measuring the inside temperature and then sending the information to the AC, and then the AC is switching off the compressor. And these both devices are not connected with each other physically. Both of them are connected over internet. And we tell that this AC should connect with this particular temperature sensor and take the control signals from the sensor. So no human being is involved. The sensor will sense the temperature, send the signal to the AC, and AC will switch on or switch off. So this is Internet of Things. Okay. Now, another definition here. So Internet of Things, or IoT, is a system of interrelated computing devices, mechanical, digital machines, objects, animals, or people that provide with unique identifiers, able to transfer data over network without requiring human to human or human to computer interaction. Okay, there are lots of definitions, but the fundamental thing is here the things are exchanging data with each other. So what's the benefit of Internet of Things? So I would say it's a game changer for smart buildings because it can provide integrated solutions to maximize operation and energy efficiency, enhance innovation, develop remote services, easy to create, and valuable insights. Keyword here is integration. Now, suppose you have a regular BMS system, you might have different systems for lighting, different systems for access control, for elevators, for air conditioning, and for firefighting, say for example. Now, if I want to exchange data between these, it becomes a big problem. And they might have sensors which are multiple, like motion sensor might be there for lighting, motion sensor might be there for HVAC, motion sensor might be there for security, and these all three will be different. They are not sharing the data. But as soon as we go for IoT, we can have one motion sensor and feed the data to everybody. It doesn't cost. There is no wiring involved here. It just goes on to internet and the data is available to everyone. And then we have seen that the reduced cost of building automation, and it is very cost effective. As I mentioned, you can get a light bulb for 500 rupees, connect it to your mobile phone app and control it, connect it to your Alexa speaker and just say switch on the light and switches on the light, right? So there is much more value besides energy saving. You can get a lot of insights into the business, you can get a lot of insights into the operation of the building, and you can improve the productivity and can do much more analytics than using a regular system. So we can get a holistic integration. We can provide several services, several sensing, computing can be shared. And then there is a communication where there is no physical network required. And still it can provide the security and privacy that is required and get the data in such a way that the privacy and security can be ensured. Though it's difficult, but this is possible. So there are three paradigms here. One is the sensing and actuators, another is connectivity, and then what do we do with this connectivity and sensors and actuators? There has to be some processes, some knowledge which is required for the operations of these devices. Okay, so this is just ensuring that the sensors, actuators are connected. But what is the logic? That needs to be ensured. So if you look at the building, what are different things that we can do in the buildings using IoT? We can do lighting, we can do access control, backup power management, landscape controls, automation, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, shading control, exterior lighting, security. All these things can be brought onto IoT. Here again, these areas are shown, and as we discussed, most of these are verticals and they are disjoint. They don't talk to each other. Okay. Now let us take the first component. What is meant by sensors? So most of the IoT solutions that you will see would definitely have some sensing, would have some communication, would have some logic, and then there has to be some action. Otherwise, just consuming the data is not sufficient. So there can be various kind of sensors. There can be proximity sensor, motion sensor, temperature, humidity, acoustics, gas sensor, like I want to know what is the carbon dioxide level in the space, flow sensor, load, torque, leakage, magnetic sensors, acceleration sensor, light sensor. So many sensors are there, and they can monitor different aspects of buildings and devices in the buildings. And this is how most of these commonly used sensors look like. So here we have LM35, which is a temperature sensor. Here is a CO2 sensor. Here is a temperature and humidity sensor. Here is a current sensor, which we put onto the wire, and then we can know how much current is being drawn. This is another temperature sensor. This can be put into ducts. Lux sensor for measuring the light level. This is passive infrared sensor, which can be used for finding out if there is any occupant in the building, and that can be deduced based on the movement of body, which is emitting infrared. So human bodies, because of their temperature, they emit infrared, and when they move, we can detect them. So that's about sensors. Now let's look at actuators. So what is an actuator? So actuator is a mechanism for turning energy into motion or energy into some kind of other kind of work which we are interested in. So the signal is given, and say for example a door opens or uh, uh, a light switches on, a compressor starts. All these actions are done by actuating devices. Okay, so they can be hydraulic, pneumatic, magnetic, thermal. Thermal is interesting because of the temperature, it expands and then operates a valve, say for example. It can be electric based on a motor or a solenoid valve. So different kind of actuators are there. Then we talk about communication. So there are various forms of communication which are available for these devices to share data. This can be wired, this can be wireless, and I am sure most of you would be aware of Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and Ethernet. And then there are n number of such communication protocols and communication medium and uh, different kind of protocols are there through which the data can be exchanged. And it is very important that when we buy any system, they should have uh, these resources available for them to communicate. If you buy, say for example, if you want to buy a bulb and connect it in our home and connect it over internet, and we get a Zigbee based bulb, but we have Wi-Fi at home, then they won't talk to each other. And then you will need a gateway which can convert Zigbee signals to Wi-Fi, and that adds to the cost. If you already have a Zigbee gateway at your home, then you can buy Zigbee devices and they can connect to that gateway and send signals over Wi-Fi. So there are various pros and cons of different kind of protocols. Uh, Generally, you will see if you have high range, you will need more power, or if you want to save power, then you will have very limited data bandwidth. So basically, if you want to transfer a lot of data, like for a camera, you will need power. And if you want to transfer very limited data, like just temperature sensor, sending the temperature data every 1 hour, then it is possible to get a long range, low power protocol also. So it's it's always some trade-off that you do when you look for different protocols. Now, when you're talking about IoT devices, generally these devices, it can be both. They can be dumb in the sense that they just measure some value and put it on internet. So they would have a very simple uh, microcontroller which can record the value, which can do a little bit of cleaning of the data, storage of the data, and then connect to the internet, uh, do some login or some security, and then transfer that data. Okay, so they can be very small processors, or sometimes they can be powerful processors like uh, Intel Edison and Raspberry Pi, the ones which are shown here. They are on a higher side. They can do a lot of computation also on board. And so depending on what kind of architecture you have, where you want to do the compute, you can get small modules and system on board, and you can deploy that. Now, so what does it look like? Basically, these are the IoT endpoints. These are the sensors like temperature sensor, humidity sensor. They might all be connected to a particular device, which might be communicating to routers or gateways, and then they can be directly connected to the gateway, or they can be connected first to a small aggregator, and then they are connected to the gateway. And from there, it pushes everything onto the internet, and then it goes to the cloud where data can be stored, and then we can develop applications on mobile phones or phone or laptops or browser-based applications from where they can view this application, view the dashboard, etc. And then if there is any control signal to be given, it goes in return, the signal goes to the LAN, to routers, to gateways, then aggregators, and then all the way to the actuators. So the actuator can implement the actuation, and like switching on the light, say for example, using a relay. So this sensor sends the data and the action comes back and controls the actuator. So, so this sensor sends the data. We see on the mobile phone, say for example, oh, it's too hot, switch on the AC, press the button, and the actuator switches on the AC. Or it can be direct. The sensor senses the temperature, sends to the cloud. Cloud decide that AC is to be switched on and sends it to the AC. A lot of different options are available. Compute can be on the cloud. Compute can be on the sensor. compute can be on the actuator, compute can also be on the routers or hubs. So compute can also be anywhere, or it can also be distributed. So that is what it looks like. So there's a sensor, sends the data, and then there is a control center, and it sends the data that, okay, switch on the sprinkler because there is a fire, like this, right? Now, one of the very important things when we talk about IoT is interoperability. What is interoperability? Interoperability is ability of two or more devices, systems, or platforms to work in conjunction. So what we want, I'll give you a simple example. Right now, if I go and buy any switch from the market, whether it is Anchor or any other brand, I can buy the switch and put it into the circuit. I can buy any light, I can buy any fan, I can buy any dimmer. They all work with each other. They are interoperable. It is not that if I have a Philips bulb, then I have to have a Philips dimmer or a Philips switch. No. So right now, take for example your laptop. You can put any mouse, you can put any keyboard. If they are Bluetooth keyboard, Bluetooth mouse, you can connect it. And if you have uh, HDMI port, you can connect any HDMI uh, monitor and it works. They are all interoperable. But it is not that easy when it comes to uh, BMS. You will find that the vendors will have a lot of issues. They will say that you have to buy a particular brand and they are compatible with their particular brands only. Though there are lots of open protocols now, but still this kind of problem happens. Now in IoT, it becomes similar and there is a challenge. Like say, for example, if I buy a Philips bulb, I have to use a Philips application. I can't use another application to control the bulb, right? Though they are allowing now to onboard different devices of different makes onto one application and control it, but still it's not that easy. So interoperability is one of the key issues that needs to be solved. And then what happens? Different platforms have different applications and they talk to only their verticals. These verticals are not domain verticals, but these are verticals based on the uh, companies who own the devices, right? And this needs to be solved. But it is very much possible because the data actually from each of them can go and lie on we can call it a data lake. So everybody can feed the data onto this lake, and then we can develop applications which can pick data from all these devices and also services which can connect to all these devices and control them. So here is a possibility of converting the protocols, converting the information from one type to another so that there is a huge compatibility between the applications, services, and different platforms. So, how IoT is better than traditional automation? Uh, Hassle-free upgrades, extended functionality, uh, lesser cost, full view of the complete services. We can provide better services to the tenants, more satisfaction, and it's more cost effective, and I would say more scalable. And we are not locked by a particular vendor. We can keep on evolving this whole thing and do it as per our requirements. Now let us see how IoT can be used in residential buildings and how it can be used in commercial buildings. Please note that I'll be presenting some ideas, some research work. This is nowhere exhaustive. I'm sure there are lots of other things happening and I would be not covering them, but I'll give you a glimpse of what's happening. So one of the simple things that can be done at homes is to provide energy feedback. There have been a lot of studies which have shown that if energy feedback is provided, then people become more aware of the energy consumption in buildings, or in this case, homes, and there is a possibility of saving energy. Now, this feedback can be at the home level. I can know how much energy my home is consuming. Then it can be at the device level. I can know what my different devices are consuming. So it can tell my AC1 is consuming this much, AC2 is consuming this much, refrigerator is consuming this much, like this. So I'll know what's happening. And then I can do comparison at a device level. I can compare. So if I get an information that how much AC energy is consumed in my neighborhood and how much I am consuming, that gives me a good idea whether I am consuming more, whether I am consuming less, and give me a comparison. I can get tips how to save energy. Suppose if I leave the door open, window open, and I am using the AC, I can get a tip that why are you keeping the windows open? And then I can save energy. I can get a tip that outdoors are pleasant right now. Why are you running AC? Open the window like this, right? And one of the important things that can be done is fault detection and diagnostics. So in fault detection and diagnostics, basically, because of the monitoring of the device, we can find out if there is a fault in the device. And once that fault is detected, we can inform the user that there is a likelihood that this is the kind of fault that has happened in your device, and this is what needs to be done to fix it. Okay. So there are different kind of feedbacks. It can be total energy consumption or device level, application level energy, and normative where we are comparing with others. And then we can provide analytics and we can provide a lot of feedback. Now, all this is possible because the cost of sensing has become very cheap. Okay. So I just need to put sensors what maybe 1,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees, and then I can get a lot of data from a device. Then cloud computing is very cheap. I don't have to put electronics on the device. I just push the data to internet and then do all the computing on the cloud, which is very cheap. And now with the availability of artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these analytics can be done. Earlier it was nearly impossible. Suppose I want to know what is the energy consumption of 1,000 flats in my neighborhood and compare it with my energy consumption, that would have been a big problem, right? But today, with smart meters, it's very much possible. And we can not only compare, we can do analytics and tell where the problem is. And then the feedback is also very low cost now. Earlier, before the availability of mobile phones, the providing feedback was expensive. You needed computer, you needed displays, right? And you don't want to spend money just for that kind of feedback. But now nearly everyone has mobile phone. Everyone has internet connectivity on the mobile phone. So it is very easy and low cost to provide feedback. So this is one of the areas which is becoming very, very powerful, where feedback when given to the users has shown very effective in saving energy. Okay, now let us talk about, is giving feedback sufficient, or can we also automate some of the things and save energy? So I'll talk something about SHEMS, that is Smart Home Energy Management System. Let's see. So basically, uh, in smart home, and when we're talking mostly about energy, the idea is very simple, that there is a home, we are measuring something, we are analyzing it, and then we are controlling it. And there can be various objectives. We might like to optimize the energy consumption. We might like to enhance the life of a device. We might like to provide more comfort. We might like to be more green in the sense that we would like to use renewable energy. But whatever is the optimization, it can be a single optimization function or it can be a multi-optimization function. But the idea is simple, that control the devices in home to optimize some function. Now, why all of a sudden we are talking about smart homes now? Why we were not talking about smart homes 20 years ago? And as we discussed, most of these things that we see here on this slide are the things which have become cost effective and which have become popular in the recent years. So cloud computing, IoT, and at least in India now do it yourself is becoming popular. Earlier, for every small thing, we used to call an electrician, call a plumber. Now, because of this COVID, sitting at home for 1.5 years and not allowing these people to help us, a lot of people have learned. And anyway, most of the people are able to deploy these IoT devices very easily because they are meant for self-installation, right? You don't need some engineer to come and fix these things for you or some technician to come and do these things. So lots of things, affordability. People also want, aspirations have gone up. Internet is easily available, fast internet is available, and AI is now really being deployed and it's effectively being used. So let's see what are the current technological trends in the area of smart home energy management system. So one of the things is that we have to see what are the entry points into the homes. So some of the entry points into the homes are smart speakers, Wi-Fi routers, and set-top boxes. Now, I think almost all of us, those who are attending this session today, would have a Wi-Fi connection at home. Okay. So Wi-Fi router is something which is connected to internet, which is connected to all your devices and has a reasonable compute power in that. Okay. So this can be your hub for a smart home because all the data is going through it. And you are not buying it for saving energy or for a smart home, you are buying it for internet. So your money is already well utilized for internet. Similarly, most of us would either have a set-top box like from Airtel, from Tata, or uh, whatever, Dish TV or something. And if you don't have, then you would have Amazon TV uh, or some kind of Roku or some kind of device from where you can watch your entertainment. So there also we have something which is connected to internet or connected to data, and we have spent money because of the entertainment or because of the internet that it provides us. So this is one of the entry points. This is already there in most of the homes. Can we use this to expand further and to make the home smart and connect to the devices and control them? That is one trend that we are seeing. Very soon you will be seeing companies which provide internet, telephony, entertainment. They will be all, providing all these services and providing you smart home service also as a package. And then comes the second point, smart home as a service. Now we all kind of agree that it's interesting to have smart home. It can save energy, it can bring comfort, but still it is not easy to decide what components to buy, how to connect them, whether how to maintain them when there is a bug, when there is a firmware update, what to do. There are issues. There are, still people are worried about making this investment because they don't know if they are doing the right choice and if these things are compatible with each other and it is easy to operate. So smart home is going to be like a service. So somebody would say, like say for example, let's say just for an example, Airtel would say that, okay, hey, you are taking my internet connection. I am giving you telephone. I am giving you entertainment. You can watch these channels. I am giving you internet. Okay, I'll give you one more thing. I'll give you smart home services. What does it mean? I'll give you 10 more devices. You can control your geyser. You can control your AC. You can control your light, your burglar alarm, etc. And I will charge you say 500 rupees a month, and all the devices are property of Airtel. If anything fails, we will give you a new one. If there is an upgrade, we'll give you a new one. If there is any firmware upgrade, anything, we'll do it. And on top of it, we will also provide you analytics, and we will tell you how to improve energy efficiency in your home. So does that sound better than buying your own things and then don't know what to do with that? Right? So that's what is happening. Very soon we will be seeing it in Indian market. A big company would be coming and offering this as a service. Now there are also builders who are getting into smart homes and giving all this uh, as a fitment, as a standard fitment. So it would be possible to buy a home with things already fitted into it. Okay. And then, as I mentioned, value added services. It is not just getting the devices which is important, but I want services on top of it. So, like, say, for example, if anything fails or anything is a problem, they should figure it out automatically and take care on fix it. Okay. So, that's the value added service I would like. Now, there are lots of devices which are already there in our homes, which are smart. So lights are available, ACs are available, which can be controlled over internet. Washing machines are getting smart. So already this side of the goods is already becoming smart, and therefore there is an interest now. Uh, then when it comes to demand side management, when it comes to demand response, then it's very difficult for utilities to talk to individual homes, and they would like to talk to aggregators. So you would have seen that in new societies, in new housing societies, the builder would supply the electricity to the homeowners. The builder will give them prepaid meters, say for example, and then take one connection and distribute the electricity to everyone, right? So the builder can now negotiate with the electricity company and take benefits of demand response and other things, and then pass on those benefits to the occupants. That is also something which is happening. Now, as I already mentioned, there is a lot of uh, standardization and interoperability going on. So recently, a new protocol was proposed by, if I'm not wrong, it is Google, Apple, and uh, Amazon, and they all three have come together and they are promoting one protocol together. So it's very unthinkable. These three companies are always fighting with each other, so they are coming together for the sake of standardization and interoperability. That's again a big thing. So lots of things like, yeah, this is the Amazon, Apple, and Google. They are coming together. So this has changed the name now. This is called Matter now. Then artificial intelligence, as we already discussed, is getting mainstream, and now you really see artificial intelligence being used into decision making. Now, this is one I like. This is called chatbots. So almost all of us are familiar with chatting over WhatsApp or over Facebook Messenger or so many other uh, chatting applications. And many times we even chat with a bot. So when we go to the bank WhatsApp number and we say something, and then the bank says, okay, tell tell us what you want, and then you select one for fixed deposit, two for savings, three for loan, whatever, and so basically you're talking to a machine, right? So now that's happening in the area of buildings also. The advantage here is that you want to do natural language discussion. You want to say, hey, switch on bathroom light, okay, and can you tell me if I left the fridge open, or is my AC on? Okay, so I can just chat with my home. So home will have a bot, and we can use any messenger that we want to use, connect to it and talk to it and get the alerts and control the things. People like that somehow, right? So instead of having a separate application, I would like to chat to my home over WhatsApp. Okay. And everybody at my home can chat over WhatsApp and control the home. So that's what's happening now. Now, when we talk about IoT, when we are talking about so many sensors and actuators everywhere in the home, we need lots of devices, lots of sensors, and they all need electricity or energy to work. And if you want to provide energy through wires, it becomes very, very difficult and very expensive and very inflexible. So in that case, we put batteries, and then becomes a bigger headache because we need to charge these batteries, and sometimes one battery will die, the other battery will die. There's a lot of headache of charging them and then disposing them at the end of their life. So there is a need for energy harvesting techniques which can harvest the energy from the ambient energy. Like, say for example, I'm sure all of us have used calculators which have these solar cells, and they charge using the light coming from the artificial light or from sunlight, and the calculator works forever, right? We don't have to charge it anytime or change the batteries. So like this, can there be sensors which can harvest the energy from the ambient energy? That is also becoming very, very hot these days. So lots of things. We can talk about what's happening in the area of hubs. We can talk about what are new applications, what are new appliances, what's happening in the area of software, computing, communications, user interface. I'll just, take you through all these topics. So there are two major things happening in the hubs. One is voice-based hubs, so I can give a voice command and control devices. And then there is app-based hubs. So you will have apps on your phone and you can control it. Earlier, they used to be touch panels in smart homes. People will install those touch panels and operate using those. Now, those are kind of going away because everybody has a touch panel in their hand. Why should I go to a touch panel mounted on a wall? And better still, if I can just say switch on the light, set the temperature to this, it's even better. So this is what is happening here in the area of hubs. Now, there are lots of smart devices which are available. One of the interesting things is smart blinds. So this is my favorite in the sense that this is, I think, which is badly required in the country. So we have so much of sunlight, okay? And the first thing that we should do in our buildings to make them energy efficient is stop direct sunlight entering into our spaces, unless it is winters. And all this excess sunlight gives us glare and increases our air conditioning energy consumption, right? So this is a huge problem. And I don't know how many of you have traveled to Europe. If you have been to Switzerland, if you have been to Italy, if you have been to Germany, uh, you will see nearly all the buildings. I can say with confidence, nearly all the buildings that you have visited would have external blinds, be it manual or automatic. You will have blinds to shade the windows. Now, they don't have that much sun, they don't have that bad summer. Why they have it and we don't have it, right? So we should also look into this and see if we can integrate blinds into our windows and control the solar radiation getting into the window. And especially if we want to have large windows and large glass. So we want to copy the West when it comes to looks. We want to have large glass, but we don't want to copy them when it comes to efficiency, when it comes to protecting that opening from hard sunlight, right? So that's the problem. So if we should look into how do we have smart blinds which can be automatically controlled or even if manually controlled, the idea is to shade the windows when direct sunlight is falling onto it and prevent the overheating. Then there are smart thermostats. They will automatically change the temperature in a space to save energy and to provide comfort. It is very well established now that we should not have a single set point throughout the year. We don't want to have 25 degrees 24 by 7 for the whole year. It's not good for health. It's not good for saving energy. We should change the set point. In summers, we can change it higher, maybe 27, 28, use a fan. In winters, we can be happy at 22 degrees also. So how do we change the set point throughout the year? We don't have to do it. We can leave it to a smart thermostat. It can change it for us.
More
And we can
important
also,
surveys we are going to check. What
I
it
think
is.
there's a little bit of
MLS,
noise coming.
longitudinal section. How
Uh,
exactly the profile will be there? I think previously we have done.
Sorry, I can hear somebody talking. Okay, now I think it's okay. So, uh, so these thermostats can control the temperature and save energy, and they can also cycle the ACs. Like say for example, there are 1,000 homes where I live, say for example, and all the 1,000 compressors are on at a given time, then there is a huge load on the grid. Instead of that, if I can cycle them, that at any given time, only 250 compressors are on, then next 250, then next 250. If I can cycle them, then I can keep the load within 1/4 of the peak load, right? So smart thermostat can also do that. Then there are smart IAQ devices which can tell you what is the indoor air quality, which can tell you through the outdoor sensors what is the outdoor air quality and can advise you. Like say for example, if the outdoor air quality is good and it is temperatures are low, it's nice weather, then open the window, right? It can advise you. It can also tell you it's very nice weather, go out and jog, say for example, right? Then ACs, which have smart thermostats, which have self-diagnostics, which have remote control abilities. Washing machines, it's very common, people have seen washing machines which can automatically detect the load and run the cycle, saving energy and water. Now, one of the things you can do with washing machine is run the washing machine when the cost of electricity is low. Now you will say, oh, in India, we don't have that concept. We have the same cost of electricity throughout the day. But for the utility, the cost of electricity is not same throughout the day. When there is a peak demand, they have to purchase expensive electricity. And when there is less demand, then they have excess of electricity. So for them, it changes. They don't put that change of cost to us, but they do to industry. And it might happen that very soon this might also be applicable in homes because we have smart meters now. So we might get an offer that, okay, in the night, just like we used to have, or I don't know, we still have different rates when we make STD calls, right? Full rate, half rate, quarter rate. That is what it used to be when I was in college. Uh, so different times of the day, there were different rates. So what if we run the washing machine when the electricity is cheapest? We just program it, keep the clothes, and it will work when the cheapest electricity is available, right? Fridges are becoming smart. A lot of interesting things happening here. You can get the inventory. You can order the groceries from the fridge itself. They're putting camera, and you can see what food is inside without opening it, because as soon as you open, a lot of heat enters the fridge. Geysers are becoming smart. A lot of people leave their geysers on all the time, and then it's a waste of energy because it keeps the hot water heated every time it gets cold. And then geyser can also be used as a storage device, so we can run the geyser when the temperature, when the electricity is cheaper, and store the hot water and use it when it is more expensive, or use it whenever we want, basically, right? Lights are getting smarter. We can change the color of the light. So many of these things, we are talking about basically comfort, and we are talking about energy savings, but there are sometimes also health aspects associated with these. Like, say, for example, when we talk about smart lighting, I'll also like to talk about circadian rhythm. So you must have heard that in the night time, we should avoid blue light, because that blue light disturbs our sleep cycle and it makes it difficult for us to sleep. So if we have more warm light, that is more, incandescent kind of color, usually it is called 2800 Kelvin color. If we have that warm yellowish color in the night, that will help us sleep, and that will help us keep our circadian rhythm in the right cycle. So the lighting, which can change its color, right? It can become more bluish in the daytime to keep us awake, and in the morning also, and in the night it can become more warm. Okay. And then we have, of course, energy monitoring systems. So one of the things that is happening in the energy monitoring system is non-intrusive load monitoring. So is it possible that I am just looking at the meter, the main electricity meter, and trying to understand what all devices are on in the home? Okay, so that is becoming possible. Now, looking at the device signature, I can detect what devices are operating in a home, and then find out when what is being used and how much energy is being consumed, right? Okay, so lots of cloud computing, and here are some of the challenges. There's a challenge that people are worried about delays. So when you click the button, it takes a little bit time for the information to go to cloud and come back and operate the bulb. Say, for example, there's a chance of data leak, security, privacy. Uh, so some of these issues are very much present when we talk about cloud computing. And similarly, when we talk about edge computing, then the problems of privacy, security are solved. Even the speed is better, but it means more cost because you are computing at your home now. And it also means that less data sharing and less analytics coming from the internet. Okay, so there are pros and cons of both of them. Now, as I mentioned, communication can be wired, wireless, and wireless can be short range and long range. Generally, long range would need more battery or more power, and or you can compromise on the data transfer rate and transfer less data and go for long range, low power wireless networks. Okay. Then another thing that is being seen besides apps and voice is gesture. So though it's not that popular, but gesture-based controls are also being seen. And with the gesture, you can control devices. Now, one of the concerns that people have when they have mobile phone apps is that you have to switch on, you have to go to the apps, unlock the phone, go to the app, go to the room, go to the device, then switch it on or off. It's so much of a pain, right? So many steps. If you have a new Android 11 installed on your phone, just press the power button and then you will see there is a new menu, and that menu is for automation. Okay, so now phone's physical button can be used not only to power it off, to restart and screenshot, etc., but you can straight away control your devices. So you can control your light, you can control your TV or whatever, right? So just one button and your popular control commands come here. Now, still, it's not that perfect because I have to select the light. Now, imagine in the future, the the home knows where you are, which room you are. Okay, so it knows that right now I'm in study room. So in study room, if I press the light button, obviously it means switch on the light in the study room. I don't want to switch on the light in the bedroom when I am sitting in the study room, right? So it is location aware, it is context aware, and it can control the devices based on where you are and what you want, right? So that kind of automation would be possible with very few clicks. Okay, so there are lots of studies available. I am giving you some references here, which tell us that how much savings is possible in homes by using all these smart devices. But one thing which is very important is people. You might have the smartest of the home, but if people are not willing, if people are not operating it properly or uh, getting involved in that, then it doesn't matter. The smartest thing can become dumb, right? So it's very important that the people and their understanding and their involvement is there when we are operating such homes. Now, I'll just quickly touch upon what is non-intrusive load monitoring system. So this non-intrusive load monitoring system can basically monitor the home devices just looking at their signature at the meter level. And basically the idea is we can know when what device is on, how much energy it is consuming, and we can also know if there is a fault in the device, right? So here you can see that there is a power consumption and this is the time. Then you can see this is refrigerator, this is oven, this is the stove burner, this is the again the refrigerator. It cycles on off like this. You can detect when what is on, and it can be helpful in understanding wastage of energy and a problem with the device. Okay, now I will switch gears and I'll move towards some research that's happening. So we are doing one project which is called Resite. It's an Indo-UK project, which is residential building energy demand reduction in India, and where we have lots of work packages. And basic idea is to measure the performance of Indian homes and see how we can implement smart homes in these homes and also come out with recommendations on the residential code, on the residential energy code in the country. Okay, so these are some of the work packages. We are developing smart home systems where we'll be deploying it in 200 homes and will see the user behavior and the effectiveness of smart home systems. We are also going to monitor 2,000 homes in the country and see how they manage their energy, how they are consuming energy, and we'll come out with models which can be used for simulations and for development of codes. So basically that's the project. Now let's change the topic. Let's talk about commercial buildings. So we saw that how IoT can be used in residential buildings, and now let's see how IoT can be used in the commercial buildings. So again, I'll be covering a variety of topics here. Here I'll be more focused on the research that's happening in the institute IIIT, and yeah, I'll try to show you how IoT can be useful here. So this is the one of the examples. Here is Sky Camera for glare detection and local comfort. So, I mentioned that we should have uh, external shades, and we should have shades on our windows so that we can control them, and we can prevent direct sunlight getting into the building, which leads to overheating and more energy consumption, right? So that means that we have to put sensors in each space, and there we have to monitor what is the light level, and then we have to control the blinds, and then it becomes expensive because sensors in each place is expensive, and those are not very reliable also. So here what we are proposing is put a sky camera. This is a camera which is looking into the sky. It's a camera which looks into the sky, and it takes a fisheye view of the sky. Uh, it takes a 360-degree view of the sky. Every picture, complete sky is captured, and then that data is available to all the buildings in the campus. And when it is taking a picture, it is taking a set of several pictures at different exposure. Basically, the idea is to get a high dynamic range image, because if I expose it too much, then because of the sun it will burn. If I expose it too less, then it will be too dark, and uh, I will not get a full variation between the area where the sun is there and the dark part of the sky, right? So like this, I can get a high dynamic image, and then I can put it into a simulation engine, and through simulation I can find out whether I'm getting glare or not, how much is the light level inside the room because of solar, because of the daylight, and then I can control the blinds, I can control the artificial lights, dim them, shade them, and basically operate the space and save energy and provide glare control, right? So there's only one sensor, and because of IoT, it is possible, because this information is available on computer to all the actuators anywhere in the campus, and all the logic, all the simulations, everything can be done over the cloud, right? So it becomes very easy. Then another thing where we are working on is task control and demand response. So basically, uh, the one of the problems that we see in commercial buildings is that there is a very little role of individual when it comes to controlling the environment. And many a times you would see when you go to an IT office that even in summer, people are wearing jackets. If not everyone, obviously, but 10% of the people will be wearing jackets in summer. Why? Why is it that in summer, when we are doing air conditioning, some people have to wear a jacket? The reason is that different people have different metabolism, and some people, especially those who have high weight, they have higher metabolism, but they have less surface area to lose the heat, and therefore they find atmosphere, the ambient conditions to be warm, and they want cold temperatures so that they can lose that heat. And on the contrary, those people who are underweight, who are thin, they have low metabolism, therefore they produce less heat, and they have lots of surface area for that low metabolism, and they lose heat, and therefore you will see that children, infants, thin people would be the one who would be wearing jacket first, because they find the temperatures to be too cold. So it is basically in our body, right? And different people have preferences for different temperature, and therefore it is not a good idea to provide same temperature for everyone, right? And it is just not the weight and the metabolism, it is also the state of the mind. If I'm angry all of a sudden, then again my metabolism or my circulation will increase, and because of the anger, I might find that the temperature is high. It also depends on my activity level. If I'm jogging or doing some exercise, then again I would find it to be too hot and I would like the temperature to be less. So same temperature settings, same everything, one person might find it cold, one person might find it hot. Also, sometimes it is not possible to provide same temperature and conditions throughout the room. So this person is sitting close to the window, therefore he is getting solar radiation, he's finding it too hot. And this person is sitting deeper inside the building space, and therefore this person finds it too cold, right? So because of the non-uniformity of temperature in the space, people might find it too cold, too hot. Okay. So how can we deliver personalized services? How can we give personalized not only temperature, but personalized lighting, personalized many other things like noise control, personalized plug loads control, all that, you know, we want everybody to have control over their workspace. So here you see a few heating systems. So this is from US, and they are developing heating systems like foot warmers, keyboard warmers. Then there can also be fans to provide some uh, air draft when in summers you want to be a little more comfortable. Then you can blow some air. Then there can be heating or cooling in the chairs. You know, here we can have some heating element. Here we can have a fan for cooling or heating. Like this, there are lots of work being going on. But there is some, so of course we get a lot of benefits. People are happy because they are able to control their environment. They are more productive. And we can also lead to energy savings because the whole space is not designed to operate at the same temperature. And if somebody is not there on the desk, then we can switch off the services at the desk, right? And save energy. But there are some limitations. So first of all, the biggest problem is that how do I sense the local information? I want to sense on every table, I want to sense temperature, humidity, whether it is occupied or not, whether the person is getting there or not. I don't have those many sensors. How do I wire them? Then I also want to understand what loads are connected uh, to the workstation, what computer or coffee machine, what all is connected, right? Then the communication framework to connect all these devices doesn't exist. Then there is no uh, integration of these devices, and whatever integration is there at all, then that is not interactive, right? And then integration need not only be between the devices, we want integration between the devices as well as within the task and the ambient, right? So ambient here means the room. So if the room is having a AC and light, and then you have separate cooling system on your table and on your and separate light on your table, then they should talk to each other also, right? So this is what we are trying to solve by making wireless low power sensors, by detection of connected loads, by using a platform for communication, by a hub to integrate the devices, and then providing analytics and actionable information to the users. So this is what the solution looks like. So each desk we have radiant cooling cubicle, right? So this is a cubicle which has chilled water coming from here. So cold water will come inside, it will go into the cube like this, like this, like this, and then hot water will go out, right? So I can control how much water flows into this cubicle and thereby control the amount of cooling that is available to me, right? So individuals can have different cooling set points, okay? Then there is this smart hub. This is the hub which has separate light, which has a fan, which has a sensor to detect whether somebody is sitting here or not, which has temperature, humidity, and CO2 sensor. Okay. And then here I can put a phone and I can get a user interface also, and the phone can get charging also. So basically, we are trying to solve all these problems of integration and providing all these sensing and services at the desk uh, using IoT. Okay. And then there is a smart strip which can also detect what is connected. And now it is possible actually to do billing per desk, do billing per person. So if I take my laptop and put anywhere in the campus, the system will detect that, okay, this is Vishal's laptop and this much energy has been consumed by Vishal in using the laptop, and I can get a bill, right? So, so now from building level, we are moving not only to the room level, we are moving to the desk level, and we are moving to the user level, and providing the services and even billing at that level. So here you see a space, and instead of air conditioning the whole space, this person is not here, so it can be warmer because there's no service. This person is sitting there, can all these are cooler, and they can control their own environment, right? So we can save a lot of energy by spot cooling here. Now, we all have seen that there is sometime electricity is not available, and there is a power shutdown, and then what happens? We run generator, and then at that time there is a limited amount of load that we can connect to the generator, and then uh, we decide what devices are used and what devices are not used. You are all from academics, so I would like to hear, what do you do when there is load shedding in the campus? Interestingly, what we do here, when there is no grid supply to the campus and we are running DG, and DG is not sufficient to run the whole campus, we switch off the electricity to the hostels, right? Because we decide, right? So when we are deciding as faculty, okay, don't give it to hostels, don't give it to student activity center, give it to meeting rooms, give it to faculty rooms, and give it to the computing, right? Whatever. So maybe it is fair, maybe it is not fair, right? But the bottom line is that everybody is not being involved in this decision making, and everybody is not being careful that, I mean, if everybody says that we will reduce the load, please give me one light and one fan, I'm not consuming too much, and we can reduce the air conditioning, and we can reduce the computing load or whatever, then why not? We can all agree, and then we can all work in such a way that we are within the load that the diesel generator can supply. So this is demand response. So changes in electrical usage by end users, end use customers from their normal consumption pattern in response to the change in the price of electricity over time, or two, incentive payment designed to reduce lower electricity use at times of high wholesale market price or when electricity reliability is jeopardized. So when I'm not getting electricity and I'm running DG, which is very expensive and having a limited capacity, then I want energy consumption to reduce. And this kind of control mechanism that allows dynamic balance of supply and demand across the electric grid is basically called transactive energy. Okay, so we can build the economic set of control mechanisms. So suppose we say that when the DG is running and now the cost of electricity is 30 rupees per unit, automatically those appliances which are non-critical, people will not run them. And obviously we have to make sure that those who are using pay for it, right? So if I'm sitting in my lab and I'm running AC and all kind of equipment which is not critical, but I'm not paying for the electricity, I don't care. But when it comes to, okay, this electricity bill will be deducted from your project, then my behavior will change, isn't it? Similarly, the students' behavior will change. So if we put the economics as a control mechanism, then things will change. And this is what we are trying to bring to every desk, every person. And then based on what is the load, every person will have a budget and they have to be within that budget. Otherwise, they will not get services. Whatever. The penalty can be cost, non-existent services, or something else. So let's see how it works. So suppose this is a campus and we have 1400 kilowatt of diesel generator and 600 kilowatt of photovoltaics, and we have 4 buildings and they are consuming something like 2000 kilowatt. So it's balanced. So the total generation and the total consumption is balanced, and we don't have grid supply right now. Okay. Now imagine that all of a sudden there are some clouds and solar radiation drops, and then because of that, instead of 600 kilowatt, we have only 400 kilowatt available. So we are short of 200 kilowatt. Now we can put a battery and supply it, but batteries are expensive, and then there's an environmental problem of disposing them. So we might have a battery for short term for maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes to take care of this 200 kilowatt. And uh, in that given time, we want everybody to reduce their consumption so that we consume not more than what is available. So everybody gets a new target. Earlier, they were consuming like 400 kilowatt. Now their new target is 360 kilowatt. So this target goes to the buildings. From the buildings, this target goes to each floor. So for example, each floor is the entity that is having metering. This can be each floor can be a particular business entity, say for example, now, or a research center or whatever. Now, when they get this target, then they would give this target to each occupant in the floor. So everybody is working on their desk, and you can see here the smart hub. You can see the cooling system in the desk. They have their own light. They have the ambient light. They have the ambient heating and cooling also, right? So they get the targets. Now, suppose each one gets a reduction of 10% and they have to maintain within 300 watts. Now let's see what this person does. So this person gets an alert. There's a red LED. This person gets an alert, and this shows the breakup. Sorry, this shows the breakup. What is the current breakup of the energy consumption at his desk? So how much is AC, how much is light, and how much is the plug load, right? The laptop, etc. So this person says, okay, I am happy without AC. So he selects switching off the AC. The fan speed will increase because the temperature is increasing in the desk, and but this person is okay because now he is within the given load. Now let's see next person. This person is not happy, and he has a higher metabolism. He needs AC. He can't survive without AC. So he says, okay, I'll switch off my laptop charging. So laptop charger is removed, and he doesn't have to physically remove the laptop charger. There's a smart plug which will automatically disconnect the laptop charging, and that much extra load is available for this person. Now here is a power user. This person has multiple monitors. He seems to be rich, or he has a lot of work, and he doesn't want to compromise, right? So he says, no, I just can't work in 300 watts. I need more. So he says, okay, I'm willing to buy some load, and I'm willing to pay for that. Okay. So he punches the value that he's willing to pay, how much he needs. And this person says, okay, I don't have any urgent work. I'll go out, have a coffee or something, and accepts the offer. So laptop is disconnected, light is switched off, and cooling is gone. And this guy gets 600 as the limit. But in totality, the overall load is reduced because of the participation of everyone. And this is called transactive network, right? So if they can arrive at the load which is within the generation and within before the battery discharges, great. Otherwise, there's a penalty. They are disconnected. Those who are not within the load, they might get total disconnection of the services, right? Anything. I mean, these are just a matter of rules that we want to make. So that is what IoT can deliver. We can reach the individual desks, and we can provide services and controls at the individual desks. Now let's see how we can do fault detection and diagnostics. This is a big problem in in commercial buildings. You would have seen in big commercial buildings, there's so many devices, okay? So many AHUs, so many walls, dampers, so many things happening. And there is one or two guys sitting in a building management system with lots of monitors, and they look to be busy. They look to be doing some great work there. But frankly speaking, they don't have much idea what's happening, right? It's impossible to monitor so many devices, and there would be some faults. They will disable those faults and alerts, And if things don't work in the end, most of the buildings are being operated in manual mode. You believe me or not, you go and see your neighboring commercial building, maybe the library, maybe any building which has BMS, and just go and talk to them and find out how many alerts they have disabled and is it being operated in a manual mode or automatic mode. Now the problem is there are so many faults that are happening and people have no clue where those faults are and how to fix them. They are only fixed when they are catastrophic, when the things stop working, when people complain that I don't have light in my room, I don't have air conditioning in my room, then they go and fix it. But nobody complains that my AC is consuming too much energy. Therefore, it is never fixed. So it has been observed that even if we carefully monitor our equipment and do preventive maintenance and find out the faults before they fail, we can save 20% of energy, right? And that's huge. It is just by finding out the small faults and fixing them. Okay, so this is called fault detection and diagnostics. It's becoming popular now, and you take a lot of data, and using this data through rules or through analytics, we can find out, if there is a fault and if there is overload and if what is to be done, and it can be fixed and energy can be saved. Okay, so the issue is first detecting that there is a fault and diagnosing what is the fault. Okay, lots of faults can be there, like say for example, simple fault like how many times you have cleaned your air filter in your homes in the air conditioners. Not very frequently, right? And if it is choked, then obviously the AC will consume more electricity for delivering the cooling because the air is not easily passing through the filter, and you're wasting energy. Okay, so basically, how do you know that the refrigerant in your air conditioner has leaked? Many times the refrigerant is leaked and less refrigerant is available, so we are spending a lot of energy and still we are not getting the cooling. Okay, so these are the faults that are there in our air conditioners and they remain there for years together and we don't fix them and we are continuously wasting energy. So if there is a system which can automatically detect these faults and tell us, and we do preventive maintenance and we do we do timely maintenance before it's a bigger fault or before we have lost too much energy, then that would be great and that will help us save energy. Okay. So with the low cost sensing and with low cost computing and all this, IoT in the end, data mining and AI and all that, it is very much possible nowadays to do this. So instead of, giving all this data, what a BMS person will get, the BMS person will get this data. Now he has to make sense of this data. Okay, that this is a fault here. Many times he will not recognize this fault. Okay, so the machine can tell that this is a fault. Here the machine is basically comparing the measured values with the simulated values and saying, okay, simulation will give me this blue line. Why this measurement is showing this much kilowatt? There's a fault. So machine is telling there's a fault here, right? So if the machine can detect the fault and tell the BMS operator that, hey guy, here is a fault, and this is the most likely cause of this fault, go and check this and fix it, then his work will become easier and there's a high likelihood that a big building can be operated by such a small set of operators, right? So I'll stop here, and this is basically a wide spectrum of topics that I have covered, which talk about how IoT can be applied into buildings to make them more energy efficient.